Retiring at 55 is mathematically achievable for more people watching this video than you probably think. That's not a teaser. Here's the part that actually matters. The biggest reason most early retirement plans fail isn't market risk or inflation or even inadequate savings. It's a 10-year structural trap baked into the American tax code that punishes you specifically for retiring before the government thinks you should. Most financial advisors will spend 3 hours optimizing your asset allocation and never mention this trap once. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how the trap works, how people get out of it, and what separates the people who actually retire at 55 from the people who spend the next decade saying they're going to. There's a quiet assumption embedded in almost every retirement article, every calculator, every piece of advice from someone wearing a suit with a license. The assumption is this: you're retiring at 65 with Medicare, with penalty-free 401k access, with Social Security available if you need it. The whole system, tax code, healthcare, Social Security, withdrawal rules was engineered around 65. If you want to leave at 55, you're running a different race with the same shoes, and I promise you, they don't fit. Think of it this way. You've spent 15 or 20 years building a vault. You've been doing everything right, maxing the 401k, contributing to the IRA, watching the balance grow. Beautiful vault, fully stocked. You decide to retire at 55, and then you discover that the door of the vault doesn't unlock until 59 and a half. The vault is right there. You can see it, but a combination of penalties, tax implications, and healthcare costs turns the first 10 years of early retirement into an obstacle course you were never warned about. That 10-year window is the bridge, and most people heading toward early retirement haven't built it. That's the central problem. Not saving enough, building the bridge. And that metaphor is going to carry us through everything that follows, because the bridge has 4 structural components. Miss any one of them and the whole thing collapses. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you the component that quietly destroys more early retirement plans than market crashes do, the one that almost never appears in the 5 calculators. But first, let me show you why the gap years are more dangerous than you probably realize. Because the window between 55 and 65 doesn't have one landmine in it. It has 3. And most people only know about one. The landmine, everyone knows. The 10% early withdrawal penalty. Take money out of your 401k. Before 59 and a half, the IRS takes 10% off the top. Plus you owe ordinary income tax on the full distribution. On a $50,000 withdrawal, in a year where you have any other income, you might net $32,000 or $33,000 after federal taxes and the penalty. That is not a withdrawal strategy. That is a way to fund the federal deficit while simultaneously depleting your own retirement. But here is the landmine people don't talk about. The sequence of returns risk for someone retiring at 55 is categorically different from the same risk for someone retiring at 65. Not slightly worse. A different category of problem entirely. Here's the math. The famous 4% rule: withdraw 4% of your portfolio annually, and you have a very high probability of surviving 30 years, was calibrated by financial planner William Bengen back in 1994. It was designed for a 30-year retirement. Someone retiring at 65, planning to around 95. Reasonable. But if you retire at 55 and live to 90, that's a 40-year retirement, and the research on 4% over 40 years is a lot less comfortable. Most serious analyses put the genuinely safe withdrawal rate for a 40-year horizon at closer to 3.3 to 3.5%. That sounds like a small difference. It isn't. On a $1 million portfolio, the gap between 4% and 3.5% is $5,000 a year, every year, for 40 years. That's $200,000 you either planned for or didn't. Now, stack the sequence problem on top. The S&P 500 lost roughly 50% between 2007 and 2009. If you retired in 2007 at 55 with $1 million and were withdrawing $60,000 a year, your portfolio hit the bottom of that crash, sitting at around $450,000. Already eroded by withdrawals, and then had to recover from there. Every dollar you pulled out of the bottom is a dollar that never participated in the recovery. A Morningstar analysis found that someone who retired in 2007 with a standard balanced portfolio had roughly a 58% chance of running out of money over 30 years using 4% withdrawals. 58%. That's a coin flip. Add 10 years to the retirement horizon, and the math gets significantly darker. The fix isn't glamorous. You build a cash buffer, 2 to 3 years of living expenses in stable, accessible form that you draw from during market downturns instead of selling equities at the bottom. The buffer refills when markets recover. Whatever you call it, bucket strategy, floor and upside, cash shield, the concept is the same. You do not sell growth assets to pay rent in a down market. Not once. Not at any price. The bridge holds because you built redundancy into it before you stepped onto it. Now, here is something it took me a long time to fully appreciate, and it directly connects to how you actually fund the bridge. You think the 401k is your retirement vehicle. It is actually your 65 and older vehicle. For early retirement, the most powerful account you can own has no tax advantage whatsoever. No employer match, no deduction, no magic. A standard, boring, taxable brokerage account that you can access at any age with no penalty, taxed at long-term capital gains rates of 15% for most investors, which is actually lower than the ordinary income tax you would pay on 401k distributions anyway. This is the reversal that changes everything. You think the obstacle to retiring at 55 is not having enough total assets, but actually, the obstacle is having the wrong kind of assets in the wrong place, in the wrong structure. The total number on your net worth statement matters less than the accessibility structure of that number. Someone with $800,000, all of it in a 401k, is in a worse early retirement position than someone with $500,000 split between a taxable brokerage and retirement accounts, even though the first person has $300,000 more. That is not intuitive. Most people find out the hard way. This is what I call the two-pile system. Pile 1 is your long-term retirement assets, 401k, traditional IRA, Roth IRA earnings. Leave it alone. Let it compound. Do not approach it before 59 and a half, except through specific, deliberate mechanisms we'll get to. Pile 2 is your bridge assets. Taxable brokerage account, Roth IRA contributions, not earnings, just contributions and your cash buffer. Pile 2 is what you live on, from 55 to roughly 65. Pile 2 is the road. Without it, you cannot get to the vault. And every year you spend dumping every available dollar exclusively into Pile 1, you are building a more impressive vault with a less passable road. How large does Pile 2 need to be? If you spend $60,000 a year and you want a 10-year bridge, you need at minimum $600,000 in accessible assets, and probably more once we account for the third landmine, the one that kills more early retirement dreams than any sequence of returns problem. I've had a lot of conversations with people who have done serious early retirement planning. They know the 401k math. They've run the withdrawal rate analysis. They've thought about Social Security. They feel ready. And then I ask them, what is your healthcare budget between 55 and 65? And you can watch the energy shift. In 2026, a 55-year-old buying individual health insurance on the ACA marketplace pays somewhere between $700 and $850 per month in most states. Before deductibles, before copays, before the out-of-pocket maximum, which for a standard silver plan can run to $9,500 per year. A single moderately bad health, year 1 hospitalization, 1 surgery, 1 course of treatment for something that doesn't resolve quickly, and you're looking at $20,000 or more out of pocket, on top of the $10,000 in premiums you already paid that year. Over 10 years, a 55-year-old should budget conservatively between $150,000 and $200,000 for healthcare costs before Medicare. That number tends to disappear from early retirement projections. I find that remarkable, given that it represents one of the largest fixed expenses in the entire bridge period. My financial advisor once told me healthcare costs in early retirement were manageable. He also has employer coverage, drives a car that costs more than a semester of college, and charges 1% of assets under management. So at $500,000 invested, that's $5,000 a year for the privilege of his optimism. Funny how incentives shape perspectives. By the way, hit subscribe if you find this content useful. YouTube's algorithm may legitimately never surface my videos again if you don't, and I have significantly more of this kind of thing coming. Here is what most people don't know about ACA marketplace premiums. Your subsidy eligibility is determined by your income, not your assets. This is a structural quirk of the American healthcare system that early retirees can use quite legally and quite significantly. If you have a large taxable brokerage account but low reportable income because you're drawing down Roth contributions, managing capital gains realizations carefully, living off pile 2 strategically, you may qualify for meaningful premium subsidies that dramatically reduce your monthly cost. In 2026, a single person with modified adjusted gross income under roughly $60,000 qualifies for some level of subsidy. Below around $30,000, the subsidies can be very substantial, sometimes reducing premiums to under $200 a month. So the architecture of your withdrawals in early retirement directly determines how much you pay for healthcare. This isn't a loophole, it's how the system was designed. But you have to build for it deliberately, because nobody's going to explain it to you unprompted. So let me introduce someone here, because this whole conversation becomes clearer with a real situation to track. There is a guy, what's called Marcus, 52 years old, mechanical engineer, strong income, methodical. He maxed his 401k for 19 consecutive years. He has roughly $800,000 in retirement accounts. He has about $90,000 in a taxable brokerage account opened 3 years ago. When someone mentioned he probably should, his mortgage has around 8 years left. He wants to retire at 55. Marcus has a magnificent vault. He has almost no road. When we started mapping out what his actual first 10 years would require, the healthcare costs at private market rates, the limited withdrawal options before 59 and a half, the income management required to preserve ACA subsidy eligibility, the cash buffer needed to avoid selling equities in a down year, he got very quiet. Then he said something I've thought about repeatedly since. Nobody ever told me there was a difference between retirement money and early retirement money. That sentence lands because it's accurate. The financial industry spent 40 years delivering one coherent message: maximize tax-advantaged accounts. 401k first, IRA next, contribute until it hurts. And for conventional retirement at 65, that framework is essentially sound. For early retirement, it creates a specific, predictable trap. You follow the rules perfectly, execute flawlessly, do everything your advisor told you to do, and you arrive at 55 with a full vault and nearly no road. It's like training for a marathon, putting in every long run, hitting your target finish time, and then discovering the race was a triathlon. The training was real. It was the wrong race. Stay with me here, because the next part is where most people's early retirement plans either get fixed or don't. There is a provision in the tax code called Rule 72T, technically Section 72T of the Internal Revenue Code, that allows you to take substantially equal periodic payments from your 401k or IRA before 59 and a half without triggering the 10% penalty. It exists. It is a legitimate option. But once you start, you cannot change the payment amount or stop early without the IRS retroactively penalizing every single payment you've already received. You must continue for at least 5 years, or until you reach 59 and a half, whichever comes later. The payment amount is calculated using IRS-approved methods based on your account balance and life expectancy. You don't pick the number. For some people, it gives more than they need. For others, less. It's a real mechanism that requires absolute precision and a commitment level that most people aren't comfortable with. One administrative error can trigger penalties stretching back years. The IRS did not design these rules to make early retirement convenient. Shocking, I know. Which is why most people who think carefully about this ultimately reach the same conclusion. Build pile 2 large enough that you don't need Rule 72T. Use it as a fallback, not a primary strategy. The bridge should be built before you step onto it. Now here is the mechanism that actually deserves more attention than it gets: the Roth conversion ladder. Probably the most elegant legal tool available to early retirees who have most of their wealth in traditional tax-deferred accounts. Here is how it works. Each year, you take a portion of your traditional 401k or IRA and convert it to a Roth IRA. You pay ordinary income taxes on the amount converted in the year of conversion. Exactly 5 years later, and the 5-year rule is absolute and unforgiving, those converted funds become available to withdraw completely penalty-free. Convert $50,000 at 55, it's available penalty-free at 60. Convert another $50,000 at 56, available at 61. You build a ladder one rung at a time, and eventually each rung produces accessible income precisely when the previous year's rung runs out. The strategy genuinely works, but it requires 3 things most people don't have in place when they first encounter it. First, you need 5 years of bridge assets before the first rung is accessible, which is exactly why Pile 2 must exist before the ladder matters. Second, you need to manage conversion amounts carefully to stay in reasonable tax brackets and preserve healthcare subsidy eligibility. Too large a conversion in 1 year can push your income above subsidy thresholds and cost you thousands in healthcare costs. Third, you have to start early enough. If you want penalty-free Roth access at 60, you needed to begin converting at 55. If you're 48 right now and thinking about 55 as your target, modest conversion started today. Begin the clock on optionality you'll want available 7 years from now. Optionality is worth more than most investors price it. Now here is where the whole structure comes into view. Let me make this concrete with actual numbers. Say you are 45. You earn $115,000 a year. You've been maxing your 401k for 12 years and have around $320,000 in there. You have $65,000 in a taxable brokerage account you started somewhat recently. Your mortgage has 14 years remaining, balance around $180,000. Your target is to retire at 55. Target spending, $68,000 a year. Here is what the next decade needs to look like. Your 401k, left alone at a conservative 6% annual growth rate, grows from $320,000 to approximately $570,000 over 10 years. But you're not leaving it alone. You're adding 10 more years of maximum contributions. The current limit is $23,000 per year for standard contributions, with an additional catch-up contribution of $7,500 per year once you turn 50. Over 10 years, with these additions compounding, your retirement account balance at 55 is likely somewhere between $950,000 and $1.1 million. That's your vault. That is Pile 1. The door doesn't open for another 4.5 years. Meanwhile, every dollar you can direct beyond the 401k maximum goes into the taxable brokerage. If you contribute $20,000 per year to the taxable account for 10 years at 6% returns, that $65,000 you already have grows to approximately $480,000. The bridge is taking shape. From that accessible pile, you earmark $160,000 for healthcare costs over the 10-year gap period. You hold $60,000 to $80,000 in cash or money market as your sequence of returns buffer the money you draw from instead of selling equities when the market is ugly. The remaining $240,000 plus investment returns during those 10 years funds your actual living expenses, while the Roth conversion ladder you started in year 1 begins producing penalty-free access by year 6. You start converting $50,000 per year beginning at 55, managing the income to stay within ACA subsidy eligibility. At 65, Medicare begins. Healthcare costs normalize. The psychological weight of that single line item, which has been one of the heaviest things you've carried through the bridge years, lifts considerably. And if you've delayed Social Security, which you can do precisely because you built the bridge instead of rating Pile 1 at 55, your benefit at 70 may be somewhere between $2,600 and $3,200 per month, depending on your earnings history. That's between $31,000 and $38,000 per year in guaranteed, inflation-adjusted, can't lose it in a market crash income. covering roughly half your annual spending from a source that doesn't require selling a single share of anything. But now, you might think, what if I just claim Social Security at 62? I can get it earlier. I'll take the sure thing. Let's run that math directly. Say your full retirement age benefit at 67 is $2,100 per month. At 62, it's approximately $1,470. At 70, it's approximately $2,610. The difference between those two paths is $13,700 per year. If you live to 85, and the average 65-year-old in America today has a life expectancy past 83, well, healthy early retirees skew longer. Claiming at 70 instead of 62 delivers a cumulative lifetime advantage exceeding $160,000. If you reach 90, that gap surpasses $220,000 in guaranteed income, indexed to inflation, that you cannot outlive. The break-even point between claiming at 62 and waiting to 70 is roughly 80 to 82 years old. If you're healthy enough to be planning an early retirement today, you are almost certainly not in the below-average longevity cohort. The odds strongly favor waiting. There is one more dimension I want to spend time on before the takeaways, because this is where I have watched smart people with excellent plans make expensive mistakes at the exact worst moment. There is something I call the one more year trap, and it is the silent killer of early retirement timing. You've done the math, the bridge is built, the vault is full. The plan looks solid from every angle. But you're nervous. Markets have been choppy, healthcare numbers feel daunting, the sequence of returns thing is fresh in your mind, and so you work one more year, then another, then another. The portfolio grows. The nervousness doesn't decrease proportionally, because the nervousness was never actually about the number. It was about certainty. And there is no number large enough to purchase certainty. Daniel Kahneman's research on loss aversion, the empirical foundation of behavioral economics, found that the psychological pain of a loss is roughly twice intensity of equivalent pleasure from a gain of the same size. So when you look at your retirement plan, your brain is silently weighting every possible downside scenario at double intensity. The math says, you're fine. Your amygdala is experiencing the plan as a threat. And the one more year decision feels like risk management, when it is often just anxiety management dressed in spreadsheet clothing. The people who actually retire at 55 and stay retired, according to Rand Corporation research, roughly 20% of early retirees return to full-time work within 3 years, tend to share one characteristic that has almost nothing to do with portfolio size. They know precisely what they are retiring toward, not what they are running from, not working, something specific, a project, a place, a craft, a relationship, a purpose that pulls them forward. People with that specificity tolerate market volatility better. They check their portfolios less obsessively. They make fewer emotionally driven withdrawal decisions. At the exact moments, those decisions are most costly. The investment behavior of someone who knows exactly why they retired is measurably more rational than the behavior of someone who retired because the number was technically sufficient. Marcus has figured this out. He's got 3 years to go. He spends exactly 0 time worrying about his 401k balance and approximately 20 hours planning the next chapter of a machining shop in his garage, 2 days a week of contract consulting in the first few years to keep the bridge intact, time with family he has missed. He redirected his incremental savings to the taxable brokerage. He started the Roth conversion conversations with his tax advisor. He knows what's on the other side of the bridge. That knowledge changes how you build the bridge. It changes what you'll tolerate while you're crossing it. 3 takeaways specific to this exact situation. First, audit the ratio between pile 1 and pile 2 right now, not the total number. If more than 70% of your investable net worth is locked in tax-advantaged accounts and your target retirement date is before 59 and a half, you have a structural problem regardless of what the total balance says. Start redirecting every marginal savings dollar beyond your 401k maximum into a taxable brokerage account immediately. Even 3 years of consistent contributions substantially changes your options when you actually arrive at 55. Second, model healthcare as a hard, non-negotiable line item in every projection you run from this point forward. Not to be determined later, not "I'll figure it out when I get there." Enter $160,000 spread across 10 years, then run the numbers. If the plan still works, you are genuinely on track. If it doesn't, you now know the exact size of the gap and can close it deliberately. More contributions to pile 2, a slightly later retirement date, a part-time income stream in the first few years, rather than discovering the shortfall during the second year of retirement when your options are severely limited. Third, start the Roth conversion ladder before it feels necessary. The 5-year clock doesn't pause for you to feel ready. If 55 is your target retirement date and you are currently 48, modest conversions started now. Even $10,000 or $15,000 per year, begin the clock on penalty-free access and build real optionality into the bridge years. That optionality costs you nothing if you don't need it. It is worth a great deal if you do. The system wasn't built for you to retire at 55. The tax code wasn't. The healthcare system certainly wasn't. Social Security's earliest claiming age is 62, still 7 years after where you want to be. Every piece of financial infrastructure the government designed assumes you'll work until they say it's acceptable to stop. You want to leave a decade before that. The math supports it, but only if you're solving the right problem, in the right accounts, with a bridge that was built before you needed to cross it. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. And that's still the most controversial thing I say on this channel.